Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Corner Office here. On a Friday, we told you we would get 2 episodes out this week just because we wanted to do one with a little bit of a preview as to like what was going on in the NBA, and another one that has, our regular NFL pick schedule, doing the stuff that we need to do, and just touching up on some quick stuff to get you out and get you guys prepared for the weekend. This recording was supposed to start at like 4:30. But Jack and I have just been sitting.
4.
Yeah, we've just been sitting in the in the studio here, just riffing for the past 30 minutes, which tells you how much we need to do this more often. But yeah, we're excited to give you some outlook as to what we think is going on in the NFL this week. It is a big week. Lines are pretty horrible. But first, I think we just want to touch up on some NBA stuff before we continue on to our regular scheduled NFL programming. And I just want to start with, look, I'll say this to be quite frank. Whenever the Spurs are on, the San Antonio Spurs, I'm going to watch the game because I think that Victor Wembanyama is a player that, despite how well or how not well he's playing, I either am like, wow, this guy is the future of the NBA, or this guy does not know how to play basketball. And last week was that I have no idea if Victor Wembanyama knows how to play basketball week.
And you made that very clear.
And the day after I say that, he has 50 points on 75% true shooting.
Yeah, so we recorded Tuesday night. We recorded that Tuesday night. And then Wednesday night, he goes off and literally shot 70% from the field or something ridiculous.
50% from three, 75% from the field. He had a night. And I'm also now okay, do that all the time. There's no reason why you can't just do that all the time.
Because realistically, it if he's playing shoot around, he can do whatever he wants.
There is no way to guard him.
And to be honest with you, watching that game, it was in maybe 2 years, this could possibly happen every night. If he can figure it out, it could possibly happen every night.
I don't think you want him shooting as many threes as he's doing. Look, I understand that not every big has to play like Giannis. You know what I mean? You don't got to just be a downhill driver who moves weight around and does all that stuff. That being said, if you're like Alex Sarr, who can't shoot a jump shot, maybe look into that, But I see the value of being able to stretch the floor, especially in today's NBA. But there's no reason as to why you should have a guy like Victor Wembanyama who can't put the ball in the basket. He's had so many problems this year with just settling for mid-range jumpers that it's unwatchable when he's not scoring.
But think about it this way. Let's say hypothetically, this season, similar to what they did with Jordan Poole in Washington last year, they're we don't care what he's shooting as long as he learns what is a good shot and what's not a good shot, right?
Yeah.
So if this year he does that, and then next year he's hitting all of these mid-range 3-point pull-up jumpers as well as getting to the rack, both driving and from the post, he will be quite literally unstoppable.
Yeah. I think the scariest part of it all is he's doing it in 30 minutes a game. You know what I mean? When he has a good night, he's not playing more than 25, 32 minutes a game. He hasn't even reached the ceiling, his capacity of them just fully letting him go yet. I don't know when that's going to be, right? But
it may not be ever, actually.
It may not be ever, just because you want to keep him healthy, which is the most important problem right now with him, is just any injury concern you have with a 7'4" guy running around on the court is probably a good one. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that he's not putting himself in harm's way, especially when he's the franchise player. But if we could get this Wemby night in and night out, I think I would be much happier as a fan.
Yeah. So I mean, that 50 ball was crazy, but it was part of a night where the NBA just exploded with scoring. Another person who had 50 that night. Giannis had 59. He was going on 59. A 60 ball. But what was crazy is that they were playing the Pistons, and a Pistons rookie was on the line with all he had to do was hit one of 2 shots to end ice the game, and he didn't. And then the Bucks took the game to overtime. Giannis had 60, and the Bucks still struggled to beat the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, Giannis needed to have 60 points in order for the 4-8 Bucks to beat the 5-8 Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham had a decent game. He had 35 on really bad efficiency. But look, if this is what it's going to take for Milwaukee to win games, like we've been saying it all season, something has to change in that coaching staff, because obviously there is an issue going on right now there.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to sound like a broken record if we talk about this every show, but it is just not good right now.
It's bad.
And honestly, I'm kind of sick of talking about it, because like at the end of the day, I don't care if they're good or bad. Them being bad is great for the Celtics. The Eastern Conference is still a horrible place to be. The Cavaliers are still the best team in the NBA.
Good. Really good.
Seems like they are never going to lose a basketball game.
We're back to what, 2016. We have the Warriors
and the Cavs,
OKC, Cavs, and Celtics at the top of the conferences. That was the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals that year. Like that's pretty cool. It's pretty. It cool. Is pretty cool. I've seen a lot of memes about that.
Something else that is pretty cool is Jared McCain finally getting minutes for the Sixers and putting up numbers night in and night out. He has been very good. Especially with as many guys out as they have been, he's been the one keeping them in. I mean, his last 2 games, he has like 34 and 29. And Paul George came back and did his thing the other night. If you're a Sixers fan and you look at Joel Embiid's return, he plays 1 game and then sits out the next one because it's a back-to-back, and they don't do that there in Philly. In his 1 game, he shot, I need to pull up the numbers because it was one of the worst shooting percentage games I've ever seen from a superstar. In his first game back, he had 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists in 26 minutes. Went 2 of 11 from the floor and 1 from 5 from 3. 8 of his 13 points were free throws. And he reminded everyone why he is the least likable guy in the NBA by being a complete diva the whole time. I mean, if you're Philly, I think Tyler said it to me best the other day. Tyler's one of my friends, the Sixers fan.
Okay.
He said, this is the end of the process, and in 10 to 12 years, they're going to come out with a 3-part 30 for 30 about the process, and it's going to be just slandering the Sixers. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that is the complete correct take, to be honest with you.
I think that this Sixers team has a lot more issues than they were expecting to have this early in the season. Obviously, the minutes that we said from the beginning that the biggest problem with this team was going to be their health, and that was before Joel Embiid decided that he wasn't playing back-to-back so that they could get to the playoffs. And for me and you, we were both like, well, you got to get there first. They're 2-9 over 11 games. You know what I mean?
And 2 nights ago, they had Paul George, Tyrese Maxey's already injured, like we talked about. He's had too much workload, and Joel Embiid were all injured for that game.
The only bright spot on this team that I see right now is, like you said, Jared McCain, who I think is going to get a lot of touches in the absence of some of these guys. But you're going to need to pick up some wins. You can't go into the break or the first 20 games of the season with a record like this. It's just unrecoverable. I don't know what you're supposed to do here if you are, the 76ers, if you're not rattling wins together at this point, especially when you have your star player back, who's supposed to be this franchise cornerstone who you're saving for the playoffs. You know what I mean? Philly is kind of a dumpster fire right now, and another one of those teams that we've kind of harped on for a bit. But I agree with your take. I think that, look, if Joel Embiid has talked a lot over the past few seasons about not having enough help, about doing a bunch of bullshit, about the Celtics being too overpowered for them, and all these things, right? And if he had that much help, he'd have a championship. You got to show it at some point. He's never made it out of the second round. At what point does the Philadelphia 76ers look at him and say, we're going in a different direction?
That was exactly the question I was going to ask you. I mean, I know that you just made this big move, and you have to at least give it a shot. Obviously with this big 3 that you've created, but I mean, when is the point where you decide to pull the plug? It has to be, I think you have to rock with it for this season, but if the 76ers don't make the playoffs this season, I think they have to blow it up and build around Maxey and McCain, to be honest with you.
I haven't seen enough from McCain to say that they're building around him like he's a cornerstone piece.
Well, but they should definitely be building around Maxey.
Yeah. And whatever young other players they have on the roster. I think their roster construction is just simply put bad. I don't think they have enough outside shooting. I think Kyle Lowry is aging. He'll probably be out of the league in the next few years. You get a guy like Reggie Jackson in free agency to go along with Paul George. He's not a shooter. You know what I mean?
Well,
you have a bunch of slashing guards that don't really fit your style of offense.
I think it depends though, right? I think that they built this team to be centered around those 3 players. And if those three players are not on the floor, you have bad roster construction. But if those three are, then you have just a bunch of glue guys, which is kind of exactly what they needed. Guys like Kelly Oubre. I mean, I think that Reggie Jackson's like, he's old, but he's going to be a glue guy if you're planning on making a legitimate run to the finals. Same with Kyle Lowry. Same with Caleb Martin that you have on that team, right? So I think that this roster is completely contingent on those three guys being healthy. And if they're not, then they are a dumpster fire. And as they are not right now, they are a dumpster fire.
But how many of those pieces can you count on to knock down a three? You know what I mean? Like Kelly Oubre has been bad. Kenyon Martin's been bad. Eric Gordon's been bad. Ricky Council can't shoot. Like, I
think that's why you give McCain more minutes, right?
Yeah,
he's a guy who's going to knock down. I mean, realistically, he should probably be starting by the All-Star break.
I agree with that. I think he's looked really good, but
I think Kyle Lowry should get the hell out of the starting lineup.
Yeah. I think those changes will be made and have to be made sooner down the line. But they need to pick up some wins and need to do it quickly if they want to get back in the playoff picture. And the lucky thing though for the Sixers is just that the East has been so weak.
That's definitely lucky.
Any one of these teams could get in.
That's definitely lucky, right? But at the same time, you got to look at both sides of the coin. The East is so weak and you still aren't getting wins against them, which is another thing you have to think about. And I mean, if you're going to be surrounding those three guys with shooters, I think it has to be McCain and Eric Gordon, who's not getting any minutes right now. And although he's old, he's one of the most notorious knockdown 3-point shooters in the league. So he has to get involved too. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, we'll keep you posted on Philadelphia. I think that they're going to have some real identity crises coming down the line here because they have just looked so out of sync right now. And this this is a legacy defining season, in my opinion, for this team. Like a lot of
absolutely, because this is the culmination of the process, right? You go through all those years where, you have the Ben Simmons era of the Sixers. Yeah. And then you go through and you have the post-Simmons era where it's Embiid and it's Maxey and they're trying to run the show and they lose to the Celtics, right? And now the final culmination is you have a big three and you've surrounded them with great roster pieces. Can you put it together? And if the answer is no, then it's too late to build something else. I think you have to completely move on.
Right. I agree. In lighter news, look, the Duke guys have looked pretty good right now. Another guy that kind of stepped up the other night was Kyle Filipowski. To be fair, the Utah Jazz is not a team that is going to be looking for anything in wins. I think they're just doing what a lot of these tanking teams are doing and making sure that their young players are getting the touches that they need.
Which is what they should be doing.
But he has looked pretty solid. I think he had 18 the game before and then 14 last night to go along with 7 rebounds and 2 assists. He is kind of learning behind a Lauri Markkanen right now. I think that's probably what his player comp probably will be in the league. My question to you is, do you see him becoming a solid role player? What do you think his ceiling is for a guy who really fell in this draft? And, I think probably had lottery potential, but since his personal life kind of got into the way of that, where do you see him at now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take a look at a guy like Kyle Filipowski and his play style coming out of college is a rough fit for the NBA in general, I would say. He's a big who's not necessarily a top level post scorer, and he's not a top level shooter. He's just good at everything. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I think that his ceiling is a role player, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't actually hate him being on this Utah Jazz roster, especially alongside someone like Lauri Markkanen, behind a center like Walker Kessler. I mean, he does bring another level of dynamic scoring as a big man to an offense, but I don't really think he brings anything more than that. I will say it is good to see him getting minutes, and him taking the tip off versus Derek Lively the other night was really cool.
Yeah, it was. It was really cool. Do you think Luka Doncic is ever going to play defense? Did you see the last play of that game?
No, I missed it.
Okay, so John Collins had a back cut. It's everywhere on the internet right now. John Collins had not even a back cut. He was just standing on the block and Luka was guarding him, turned away. John Collins just caught the ball and dunked it. Luka wasn't even close to him. 113 to 113. Game was tied.
Watching it right now.
Yeah.
Oh, take a look. My God. All he had to do was put his hand up.
Is he ever going to play
seriously
defense?
a wide open dunk.
Oh my goodness gracious.
I think that's the biggest problem with this Mavs team, right? Like I talk about this with George all the time.
Yep.
Their defense has been really good and their offense has been really bad, which means that you have no clue what you're getting with this Mavericks team. They're doing the complete opposite of what you thought that they were going to do.
Yeah, I hear you.
And at some point, it's going to fall back to normal. These guys are going to go through shooting slumps, and I just don't see this Mavericks team being good this year.
Okay.
I don't think very low on them.
I think a Western Conference Finals comes down to the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Suns, and the Warriors right now, and maybe the Lakers. But like, I really don't see either the Timberwolves or the Mavericks repeating in that spot.
Yeah, I just don't think the regular season matters in the West as long as you make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. It is kind of a guessing game once you get there. But like, look, there are so many teams, 11 teams in the West that have a 500 record or better. Like that's a lot of teams you got to get through.
Yeah. And for a team that I mean, let's call a spade here. For a team that had a lot of lucky breaks in their last finals run, I don't think it repeats again this year. Right? So I mean, you're really banking on a lot of things going your way, and when they don't, they're going to be pretty surprised. So I'm just not very high on this Mavericks team.
I don't disagree with that.
I don't think they're particularly well coached either.
Interesting. I mean, Jason Kidd is a good defensive head coach. That is kind of what he's known for, but there is no offensive scheme right now that aside from just isolation.
Which is the main problem, right? Because you created this team that's supposed to be built around your offense, but you have a defensive-minded head coach. It's like watching the Jets play football. They have a defensive-minded coach. And they looked like all out of sorts on offense, even though they were built that Jets team is built around their offense. But Robert Saleh was the defensive head coach, which is why they couldn't figure it out. I think it's a very similar situation going on in Dallas.
All right. Interesting.
But yeah, last point real quick, just for a little bit of Celtics talk, because we have to do it every time we have a show.
Of course.
I think you legitimately look at Peyton Pritchard's numbers right now, and I think he's in that 6th man of the year conversation.
He definitely is. I think he's averaging 16 points a game.
I think he's pretty high in that conversation.
Yeah, he's in the short list of about 5 players that I could think of that, could be eligible for the award year in and year out. And he has taken the jump as to being the leader of the second unit. Like we don't have a 10-3 record without Peyton Pritchard. Now, Jack and I have talked a little bit about the Celtics being, in my opinion, I think they're a little disappointing right now.
I would agree.
Despite the 10-3 record. I think we were expecting them to come out and just stomp teams, and I don't really think that they've done that. They're still really, really good, and I still think they're the best team in the NBA, but they haven't been able to hold a lead. You lose to the Atlanta Hawks in the group stages of the in-season playoff. But yeah, the one pretty consistent piece that's been here this whole time, aside from the star players, has just been Peyton Pritchard, and I think he has kind of put them over the hump a lot of times. 16 points per game coming off the bench behind guys like Derek White, Drew Holiday, those are really good numbers with the amount of firepower that's on the squad.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that something that we talk about all the time in football, mainly, especially with the Kansas City Chiefs this year, is good teams win, great teams win against the spread. And this is completely aside from betting. The spread is measured as to where your expectations are.
Yeah.
And if you are winning, but you're not winning against the spread, then you are, if you are a top level team, you are still disappointing your expectations. And this Celtics team has been in some really close games with a lot of teams that they shouldn't have. I mean, going back to the start of the season, the Brooklyn Nets, they've been in a legitimate game with twice. The Indiana Pacers, they lost to on a last minute shot. They kept the Hawks around for way too long, in my opinion. So it's not necessarily that they aren't getting wins and they aren't getting results. It's just not quite to the level that we've expected it to be. And You don't really go into a lot of these games with a ton of confidence right now that these guys are going to get it done. And it may be that they win, but for me, when we put the expectations on this team, and I mean we as an industry, as a media industry, when we put the expectations on this team, we set them up there with the greatest teams of all time. And so far, they are not reaching that level.
Yeah, I think that you haven't seen them perform to the level of their standard since the New York game to open the season, where they came out and made a statement and made a shit ton of threes and just played their game, and they looked like the most unstoppable team in basketball. And I think that I think that they haven't peaked yet. I certainly don't think that that's the case. I think that they have a lot more room to grow. but I would like them to get like 2 or 3. Like they haven't rattled off like 10 games in a row like the Cavs have. You know what I mean? Like the Cavs look dangerous. And every game that the Cavs play, you're expecting them to win, which I don't think is the case right now with the Celtics.
And so that's why next Tuesday is going to be a huge what's it called? Litmus test.
Okay.
For the Celtics. I mean, it's going to be the VAR for them. Can they beat a legitimately great team? We haven't seen it so far. I would really like to see them come out and have a statement win against the Cavs. And if they disappoint, then there isn't cause for concern, but then I think it legitimately becomes a conversation about what their expectations this season are.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to football, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Last week we didn't make our picks, which is okay because, like we said, the NFL has kind of been, in and out for us right now. I mean, as much as we love to watch football, sometimes we miss it. And this upcoming week, we just wanted to make sure that, we got some picks in. Man, are these some really awful games this week?
Hey, before we get into this week, last time we did record, I went 5-0, which means that we are now tied for 5-0s this year. Both at 2.
Tied for 5-0s. We're both at 2.
I don't think we'll get a 5-0 this week.
It's getting heated. It's getting heated in here, though.
It is. Yeah, it is for sure.
Let's go. But that being said, Jack, take it away. What is your first pick for this upcoming week looking at these games here?
So normally when we're making these picks, there are ones that just jump off the sheet where it's like, all right, whoever's got first pick, they have a guaranteed win because this one's going to hit.
Right.
This week, we didn't look at any of them and think that one's a win. So with my first pick on Sunday Night Football, this week, I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals plus 1.5 over the Chargers.
I think it's the right choice.
Yeah.
Like, look, the Bengals have been one of those teams that we've talked about being like super interesting just because their defense and offensive line are really, really bad. But their offense is just so talented. You know what I mean? So like the Chargers have looked fine. I don't think they're a good 6-3 football team. I don't think they have an above 500 win. And I do expect the Bengals to win this week. So I think that was a good pick by you. My first pick, I have the Ravens -3 over the Steelers. This is an interesting game just because I think I had to make this choice because the Ravens have looked so good this year. But the Steelers like to muddy up the game and get some really gritty wins. You know what I mean? They're a gritty 7-2. And as much as like we've talked about them over the past couple of weeks being not a good football team, like I don't know if that's true. Like I have no idea what to expect from the Steelers team. I have no idea.
And it's a great point, right? I mean, this Steelers team, it's a complete toss-up. They got a great win against the Commanders last week, which honestly, I don't really think anyone thought that they were going to come out with.
No.
And they just keep winning football games. And the Ravens, on the other hand, have lost a couple really bad football games. So I think that this game's kind of a toss-up. But again, you look at that team, it's one of the ones that you have to make the pick.
Yep. Give me pick number 2.
My second pick, McCaffrey's back, and I thought the Niners offense looked really good last week against a struggling Bucs team. But, I mean, I think that they're going to really click this week, especially in a division matchup at home against the Seahawks. I have the Niners -6.5.
Okay. I don't necessarily hate it, is what I'll say. I do think that the NFC South has been a pretty weak division thus far, and obviously the Bucs having as many injuries as they have had has been a pretty big detriment to their season. And with that, I'm going to take the Falcons +2 over the Denver Broncos. I don't really trust what's going on in Denver. Don't really know what to do with this game either. But I trust Kirk O'Chains in like a 1 p.m. game to, go out. A 4:05 game. Perfect. No one's going to be watching this to go out and get a win while no one is watching this game on live TV.
Yeah, I haven't watched a single Denver Broncos game this year, so I can't really tell you anything about it, which they might
Their
be the
secondary is really good. That's all you need to know.
I do know that. But they're another team, right? I mean, they've got a great record right now.
They're certainly a team. They're 5-5.
I guess they're 5-5, but last week they just barely lose to the Chiefs on a blocked field goal. So they're another kind of toss-up team that really has no direction. So you've got some pretty risky picks so far this week, Al.
I know. I feel good, though. I'm all right. I feel good.
That's not – you don't sound like you feel that good about them.
we're gonna roll with it. We're gonna roll with it. All right.
My last pick. I think the Bears have looked horrible for the last 2 weeks, coming off a 29-9 loss against the Cardinals and only scoring 3 points against the Patriots last week.
Yeah,
they've scored 12 points in the last 2 weeks. I have the Green Bay Packers -5.5, and I believe the Packers are at home. No, they are. They're in Chicago, but still, I think they'll go on the road and they'll beat them by 6. Yeah,
that should happen. Jordan Love has looked like really weird this year. I don't really know like what to make of him, but the Bears have been so incredibly bad that I think that this pick is pretty safe. My last pick here, I am taking the Rams -5.5 over our beloved New England Patriots. I think they have too many weapons. I think we've seen the best of Drake May probably for this entire season.
That's such a bummer take, dude. I mean, come on.
But
how can you even say that?
I'm just pretend
to be excited about it
like it is.
Pretend to be excited about him. What's great that you've seen from him that you don't think you'll see again next week?
I don't know. Maybe he proves me wrong. But what I'm going to say is that I think the Patriots should be looking for a draft pick. Probably not to win more football games. Yeah. So I think that they're probably going to lose this week.
Like a receiver, mate, like a wide receiver,
like a Travis Hunter.
Oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it? That would be fun.
That'd be really cool. But I think the Rams will get the win here and probably will cover, even though the game is in New England.
I believe it is in New England. Yes, right. In New England. So let's move into not game of the week. This was one that we always as I said earlier. We talk about things that jump off the sheet. This one jumped right off the sheet as to not game of the week. No Carolina Panthers this week. That won't stop us from another NFC South matchup.
In a field of really bad games, this was the worst.
I think that every game of the week has been NFC South, AFC West. Those are the two. So we're going to have another one this week. Browns Saints in New Orleans? Yeah, in New Orleans. I'm taking the Cleveland Browns. I think that their wide receiver core has actually looked pretty good in the last couple of weeks. And it is a JMO revenge game. So I think shit might get wicked in the Metrodome.
You cannot bet against Jameis. I love Jameis Winston. I will die on this hill. He's not a good quarterback. He's a fun quarterback. He's good for the NFL. And I'm excited to see the Cleveland Browns go in and just mollywop the Saints on Sunday night. Or Sunday.
Definitely Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Midday.
Definitely Sunday afternoon.
Sunday midday. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. That's a good pick. Awesome. That's a good pick from us. Especially, I can't stress it enough. Jameis Winston is returning to the Metrodome. And I think that he's going to do some serious damage. And by damage, I mean...
Ladies and gentlemen, Jameis Winston is returning to the Metrodome.
Jameis Winston has hit the Metrodome. And by damage, I mean probably 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
3 interceptions.
Yeah. Game of the week. This is one that we have been waiting for all year. It's really who's who in the AFC between the Chiefs and the Bills in Buffalo, I want to say. In Buffalo. And the Chiefs have proven that they can go in there and win. I think that this is a huge measuring stick for both of these teams.
Uh-huh.
I am going with the Bills. I think the Bills will end the Chiefs' undefeated reign and win this game.
I love that pick because it means that I can take the Chiefs because it's fun to go against each other. But I have really no faith in the Bills when it comes to them playing a really good team. And this Chiefs team has proven to be a really good football team, despite the fact that they have looked, probably a little bit below average for their standards. Give me the Chiefs to win this game outright against the Buffalo Bills.
But you can't be rooting for them.
No. Yeah. I don't think anybody in America is rooting for them, unless you live in Kansas City. And even then, you're a piece of garbage.
Yeah. Just pause our show and stop listening. No, please don't do that.
Don't do that.
Please don't do that. All right, so those are our picks for this week. We'll be back early next week. I'm assuming that you're okay with doing it early next week.
Sure.
Same kind of style of episode with some more NBA heavy content and to dissect what happened this week. But until then, this has been the Corner Office, and I am Jack Byrne.
And I'm Alex Penders.
Come on, 3.
1-3.